The Employer Perspective Panel is where we will listen and learn about the vital role that business and industry can play in North Carolina's war on talent. Today's business and industry is spending billions of dollars to recruit and retain a talented workforce. But according to the 2018 North Carolina Employer Survey, half of all employers surveyed reported difficulty in hiring new staff, a substantial increase over previous years. They cited a handful of reasons, among them inadequate employability skills, inadequate experience or technical skills, several instances where there simply weren't enough candidates in the applicant pool to fulfill their open roles. This is an urgent disconnect between the talent we are producing as a state and the evolving needs our businesses and industries need. The problem is real, and the time is now to create an intentional plan for how North Carolina will educate, retain, retrain our workforce. We must modernize how our state thinks about its assets, especially our adult learners. Adults are working longer than ever before, yet many of the skills they need to be relevant in the labor market are changing rapidly. So how can we ensure that workers of all ages have access to the educational opportunities that they need to be successful of the jobs of today and tomorrow? The John Belk Endowment is a proud supporter of this important conversation about how to reconnect adult learners to the economic opportunity right here in North Carolina. As we think about making investments in education across our state, we realize that our grant partnerships will only be as strong as our understanding of the people and the places that they're intended to serve. We must meet all North Carolinas where they are and take them as far as they can go, a community college foundation principle. I started my career rooted in a 130-year-old retail company in the Southeast. In my lifetime, we witnessed Made in America and the pride that it produced. But we saw companies send their production overseas, and we felt it very real life across our state. And today, we are all witnessing how technology is disrupting, in a good way, our business and industry, and our education, and our healthcare sectors. And to members in the communities of all ages in our 100 counties. As a company, we watch these contrasting themes play out in the 17 states in which we operated. We understood that the talent gap was real. Similar to Tennessee, as our state's economy and jobs have changed, we quickly realized that we needed to double down on this state-led, locally owned strategy. And this is why the Goodnight Foundation, the Gates Foundation, and the endowment launched my Future NC Commission and began the important work of setting a post-secondary attainment goal for North Carolina. We've been very specific about what we need to accomplish. By 2030, our state's businesses are going to need 2 million people with a meaningful credential and high school. This is a statewide plan for every entrepreneur, small, medium, large, and corporate business can get behind. Honestly, it's self-serving to businesses to have a hand in shaping the education of its workforce. So how are we going to get there? Right now, if we do nothing, we will fall short of the goal by 400,000 people. That's 400,000 North Carolinians without the education and skills needed to fill our state's future jobs. This is urgent, this is solvable, and we can act now if we come together. How will we get there? That's where business and industry comes in. You are the end consumers of our state's educational pipeline. Your company's bottom line is directly impacted by your employees. You know better than anyone else the education and upskilling that your jobs require, and that this is ever changing. In the next few minutes, we'll talk with some of the business leaders in our state who are taking proactive steps to source, train, and retrain their employees. If you are a business owner, I hope you will walk away from this conversation asking, what is my company's talent development strategy, both overall and for adult learners specifically? How much money am I spending on talent recruitment? And what is the current talent strategy's ROI? And am I okay with the status quo, or can I do better? We'll save questions from the audience towards the end of the panel, but first we'll hear from Dr. Jerome Williams of Novant Health. Then we'll talk with Stephen DeMay, North Carolina's president of Duke Energy, and Gary Salamano, president and CEO of the North Carolina Chamber. You can read their full bios in the online program. So let's get started. Dr. Williams is the practicing interventional cardiologist and senior vice president of consumer engagement and corporate health for Novant Health. I think that was a test. Whew, okay.
You did great. You did great.
With that, I'd like to turn it over to you. It's a
Thank you,
pleasure to have
MC.
you.
I appreciate it. Let me make sure I understand how the slides work. Let's see. This is I think I may require some technical assistance. There we go. Okay. So thank you very much. I am happy to be here today. You know, this topic is near and dear to my heart. Many of you are probably saying, well, how is this topic near and dear to a cardiologist's heart? And pardon the pun, I didn't actually mean that, but wow, that was good. I didn't even recognize that. Woo. But my whole career has really been about the improvement of the health of individuals. And it's not just improving the individual health, but also improving the health of communities. Now, way back in the early 80s, late 70s, when I was in medical school, we actually used a term called community health and social medicine. Now we use the term social determinants of health, but really it's the same. And what's the bottom line? The bottom line is that in order to improve the health of our communities, in order to improve our communities, period, we have to look beyond just biological and genetic elements of health. We now realize that only 20% of health is really biological and genetic in nature. 80% has to do with what we call social determinants of health, of which economic mobility, workforce development is key. So I'm just excited to be here. Now, MC, she read my title, Senior Vice President of Consumer Engagement and Corporate Health. And what does that really mean? Essentially, it means anything and everything that faces the community for Novant Health rolls up to that position. So community benefit, community wellness, corporate social responsibility, as well as corporation health. So really germane to the topic today. So I'm going to speak a little bit about one of the programs that we have at Novant Health that encourages workforce development in a very intentional way, as well as not just workforce development, but to move our team members from one economic strata to the next to affect upward mobility. Just a little bit about Novant. We're a large integrated healthcare system across 4 states, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, and Georgia. We employ approximately 30,000 individuals, close to 30,000. That makes a big deal as we talk about impacting communities. We employ 1,600 physicians over about 650 locations. One of the many attributes of our corporation has to do with our diversity and inclusion, and we've been recognized over the last couple of years for the intentional work as it relates to our leadership team, as it relates to diversity and inclusion. Why is that important as it relates to workforce development and economic mobility? Because we want to lead and speak to the communities that we engage in, all the communities we engage in. Lastly, I want to share with you that as a system, throughout our system, we spend approximately $830 million in community benefit. That number has to include our uninsured care, care for patients who don't have any other means for care, and they use us as a safety net among many other community partnerships, sponsorships, and activities to support some of the activities that was discussed earlier today. I always start with our mission, vision, and values because whenever we talk about workforce development, we have to begin with the culture of the organization. And so our mission is to improve the health of communities one person at a time. And improving the health of communities must start with our community, the community within Novant Health. We have a people credo of which we stand on 3 pillars. Our people philosophy, that we state that we treat each other with respect and compassion, and we embrace our differences. We always remember that we're in the business of taking care of all people, and we have to start with our team members. We have our people aspiration, where we are an inclusive team of purpose-driven individuals and inspired and united by a passion to care for each other. And we have a team member experience, which is depicted in the pictorial that underscores hear me, know me, lead me, grow me, inspire me, and empower me. And essentially, we want to hear from our team members. We want them to bring the different viewpoints to our organization because we realize that it makes our organization stronger and richer. And in turn, we as leaders in our organization, we must be transparent. We must support our team members. And with that, we can improve their lives and therefore the lives of individuals in the communities that they live as well as serve. Now, before we really talk about economic mobility within Novant, we really have to look at it in the broader picture of what's going on in the world. And the United Nations, along with the members of the United Nations in 2015, set out on a very big, bold, and audacious goal, which is to eliminate poverty, protect the planet, and improve the lives of individuals on the planet. And the programmatic activities that will help reach that goal are broken down into 17 elements, okay? And you can see the 17 elements on the screen. However, we're going to focus on really 2. No poverty, number 1, and 8, economic growth. Now, it's you can easily see how the other elements also can affect economic mobility, and they're all interrelated. Now, on a worldwide scope, most people think that poverty is increasing based on the news that you read, but in fact, if you look at the data, poverty is actually decreasing worldwide. However, we still have a significant way to go. Now, if we look on a more national level, many of you are well aware of the Chetty study that came out around 2014. And essentially, Chetty and his colleagues, a bunch of researchers, looked at a bunch of data sets. And what they found in that data set was that the economic mobility of individuals is clearly related to where they live, what state they live in. So we go from the world stage of addressing poverty and economic mobility, and we're following it down to the national stage. And as you can see in this heat map here, in the southeast region, as well as in the Rust Belt region, there is significantly less intergenerational economic mobility. That means, in short, that if you start off in the lowest economic strata, the next generation in that household, the chance that they'll achieve a higher economic strata, okay, is dependent on where you live. And if you look at the South and in the Rust Belt, Michigan, kind of Ohio area, you see that intergenerational economic mobility is lacking. If you live in the Midwest or the West, the chances of you ascending the economic mobility ladder is much greater. Now, if you drill down even further from the state level to the city level, and even by zip code, you can see that Charlotte ranks 50 out of 50 or last in major cities as it relates to economic mobility. 50 out of 50. I don't think I'm saying anything new to individuals in this room. You probably already know that. So what did that lead to? That led to the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Opportunity Task Force report, which drilled down even more on the data and recognized there are certain zip codes within our community that are plagued by lack of intergenerational economic mobility. Novant Health was a member of that 20-member task force, and our own Dr. Filia Garman-Brown was the co-chair of that task force. And what they came up with from that task force was that, yes, Charlotte is an amazing, vibrant city. That's one viewpoint. But also, there's another Charlotte that is not as economically vibrant and does not have the same economic mobility. Through that report, they discovered that there are three interrelated determinants that really shape one's trajectory in terms of economic mobility. One is early childhood education, which the prior panel spoke to. The second is college and career readiness. And the third is family stability. So from the Novant perspective, we wanted to focus on the career and college readiness. And so what did we do? We took a look at ourselves. We took a look in the mirror. And of those 30,000 employees, we realized that we have a number of individuals that are challenged economically, unfortunately, even though they're employed by a healthcare system. And on top of that, that many of those individuals live in zip codes where opportunity is lacking. So, as a result of what is going on the worldwide level, the national level, state level, city level, and zip code level, we began a process to see how can we look at our team members and a select group of team members and see what we can do as an organization to advance economic mobility. What we found was the most important, or one of the most important group of team members are certified medical assistants who spend the vast majority of time, more than doctors, more than nurses, but our medical assistants spend the vast majority of time with patient contact. And therefore, the perception of how they're being cared for clearly is impacted by that medical assistant. We also realized that as a cohort, they're one of the lowest salaried individuals within our system. So then we began a process to engage with those medical assistants to see what are some of the challenges or barriers that they may face in moving up the economic ladder. At the same time, we realized that there was an important business proposition as well. If you're not aware, there is a severe nursing shortage around the country, and North Carolina ranks pretty high in terms of nursing shortage. So if we're able to support our team members through development, from a medical assistant to a registered nurse, that then fills a need within our system, helps the individual as well as helps the community, it's a win-win-win situation. And so that's exactly what we set out to do. So it was a 2-year journey. And the last panel, it was mentioned that one thing you must do when you're working with communities, and all communities, is you have to listen first. So we went to our medical assistants and we listened and listened and listened and heard some of the challenges that they may have in terms of moving up the economic ladder. And with listening, we were able to craft a pilot program that essentially provided not just financial support, but social support for medical assistants who aspired to become a nurse and therefore move up the economic ladder. Now, we identified essentially 5 major solutions to 6 barriers. First and foremost, if you're a medical assistant, do you have the funds to pay for nursing school? And so we had to deal with that barrier. And so what we decided was we would pay tuition for medical assistants. If they aspire to go to nursing school, they applied and got accepted, we would pay for their tuition. But hold up. If you're going to nursing school and you need your job as a medical assistant, there's really no time to study. There's no time to engage in academic pursuits and activity. And we realized that. That was another barrier. So what did we do? We said, okay, we can reduce the work week, the medical assistant's work week, to 12 hours a week without cutting their pay and without cutting their benefits. That also afforded them the opportunity not only to continue to work and generate income for their family, but to have time to excel at their academic pursuits. Very important. We also realized that, and all of you know this from living decades and understanding that funding doesn't always solve everything, right? We realized that funding alone was not the secret sauce. The secret sauce was engaging with our employees from a mentorship standpoint, okay, and from a social support standpoint. Many of our younger medical assistants and team members, they don't have the social capital to understand, well, I won't say understand, they don't have the social capital to connect with the resources that can uplift their activities and their achievements. So not only did we provide a one-to-one mentor for each student, but we also provided a career life coach. And then lastly, if they met all the requirements and they graduated from nursing school, we made sure they had a position in terms of a registered nurse residency in 7 specific areas. We didn't target which area they had to go into, but 7 areas pretty much covered the vast majority of those individuals. And so what did we find out? We found out that there was one, embracement from the team members of the concept. Not just embracement of the concept, but team members talked about it with other team members. If you don't appreciate and understand the force and the value of team members talking to other team members about a positive experience, then you're missing out, because that then continues to sell the program and support the individuals. We saw significant return on investment to Novant Health with reduced recruitment fees, reduced vacancy acquisition fees. So from a business standpoint, it was vitally beneficial to our organization. But more importantly, it's a benefit to the community, because that individual now is moving up the economic ladder, number one. Number two, going back to the community and leading in their communities. And most importantly, as far as I'm concerned, is building capacity in those communities to advocate for themselves. We can have all sorts of programs, we can have all sorts of funding, but until we figure out how to support communities to help activate them, to build capacity in those communities to support and argue and politic for themselves, then we'll just slide back to a similar situation. So from this slide, you can see there was clear benefit to teams, organizations, and the community. Now, because of the success of the pilot program, which included 5 individuals, okay, we're now quadrupling the program to 20 individuals. And not only are we quadrupling the program to 20 individuals, we're now looking at other areas of our workforce where we can implement a similar type of strategy for workforce development. In our new cohort this year of 20 scholars, you can see the demographics, okay? They're predominantly young, predominantly female, predominantly people of color, and predominantly single household, head of single household. Now, I want to switch directions just for a minute and just share with you other activities that we're engaged in Novant. And we have a career ladder program. And so what is a career ladder program? Essentially, it's a program that lays out specific steps and guidelines to achieving the next step along a particular pathway. So if you are a medical office assistant and you're looking to progress up the pathway, or if you're below a medical office assistant and you want to move up to that position, there's information on how and what steps you need to take to achieve that, and there's support for that as well. You can see pharmacy tech, nursing assistant, revenue cycle, IT progression, many areas within the company. We are trying to develop pathways and identify individuals to ascend those pathways. Lastly, it's vitally important that we have significant support for our employees. A couple of years ago, when there was a major hurricane, we have a facility in Brunswick on the coast. Many of our team members, homes flooded, cars flooded, just pure devastation. What we did was we essentially financially supported those team members during that time because we felt it was that important. Now, I'm sure there are other institutions with programs out there, but we understand once again that with supporting our team members, 30,000 team members, we can not only improve their lives, not only improve Novant Health, but also the communities that they serve. Now, I'd like to leave you just with one thought. While this activity reaped significant benefits and continues to reap significant benefits, I will challenge all of us in this room to look at the big picture. And the big picture really is we have to change policy. We have to change policy if we're really going to make a difference. Once again, we can fund what we all day long. We can collaborate across multiple sectors, but unless we focus on the policies that are intentional and some unintentional, that creates this milieu, that creates ineffective economic mobility, we'll still be in the same place. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. It is exciting to see a major healthcare innovator thinking about the talent that they have today and how they can connect more people directly into your workforce. Next, I would like to introduce our other two panelists. To my left, we have Gary Salamito, who runs the North Carolina Chamber. He's been on the job 6 months, but has been there for quite some time, so we are excited to hear from him today. Also, further down the line, we have Stephen DeMay. He is the president of North Carolina's Duke Energy Corporation, and so we are excited to hear from both of them. I would like to start with a question for you, Gary. The North Carolina Chamber recently hosted an all-day-long education and workforce conference that highlighted recommendations for my future NC Commission. And the Chamber has also endorsed the attainment goal, including finding that we are going to need 400,000 more workers by 2030 to meet our state's business needs. What are you hearing from members about the skills gap and the importance of setting a clear attainment goal?
Yeah, we're hearing a lot. It's our top issue. We look and we survey our leadership every year. We do a CEO poll. We talk with a number of our members on a regular basis, reaching out, asking them questions. And for the past 3 years at least, either one or two has been education and talent supply, and the other one has been healthcare. And healthcare and education and talent supply are inextricably linked, as you just learned from Dr. Williams. So what we hear about is we have people and we have jobs, but we haven't done a good job of creating an environment along the talent supply chain that links those folks up very well with it. So for us, it's about how do we facilitate, catalyze collaborations along the talent supply chain, everything from pre-K through university, to help get alignment. So when My Future NC came out with an attainment goal, it was easy for us to endorse that because our members in the business community, 2 of them are sitting on the dais with me here today, they look at the data, they set a goal, and then they put a plan in place. So we're hearing a lot, and we're trying to facilitate discussion. We're trying to put and profile Novant and Duke Energy, which you'll hear about in a little bit what they're doing. But for every one of these organizations, there's other companies out there who, in their communities, are establishing themselves, planning, doing demand-driven planning for it, looking to develop local community leadership. For example, our foundation did a study a few years ago, and we went to 11 areas of the state, and we just sat and listened. As we talked about, the first thing you have to do is listen. And what we learned as a central theme is if you don't have local leadership, if you don't have people in your community that are skilled, that are trained, that are out there and supported, you're not going to be able to develop the systems you need, not only for today, but for tomorrow. So in business, it's not only what you need today, is there a predictable, reliable pipeline of talent for the future, so that when you're thinking about making your investments, are you going to make them? So what they've asked us to do in the second phase of our Vision 2030 plan is to, how do we operationalize that? So we looked around, and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in their Education Institute has something called Talent Pipeline Management. So it's a program that uses demand planning, a demand-driven approach, to develop people that can go back into their communities, whether it's from the educational system, from the company, from a county government, and become this demand planner. Look at the data, then bring people together, identify what the common needs are for a cohort of businesses, then go out to the educational institutions and work with them to say, okay, how do we develop, how do we access, what are we doing well, where are the gaps, and how do we work together to develop a predictable, reliable talent pipeline that meets the needs of our community. And the last thing that is kind of overarching in that is we learned you got to think big, but you really got to act small. So think big about what you want to accomplish, but then act small, and that means one community at a time, bringing folks together.
That's great. Thank you. It's wonderful to hear North Carolina's employers are giving you such great feedback. And thank you for your endorsement of My Future NC. So we just heard from Dr. Williams how he described how the large healthcare system is rethinking the importance of developing a new workforce. As with a lot of companies, Duke Energy's workforce is trending older. How important is it to retain existing workers to replace retiring workers? Stephen, can you shed some light on this, please?
Thanks, MC. So as I climb into the answer to that question, let me just review what you probably already know about Duke Energy. We are a large employer. We're a large company. And in many instances, that makes workforce development, workforce training easier. And in certain other ways, it makes it much more difficult. So we are a company of 30,000 employees. We operate in 7 states. And I'm going to talk about North Carolina since I'm the North Carolina president. 16,000 of those 30,000 employees work in North Carolina. That's how significant our presence is here. And you have an appreciation for our business. We generate and deliver electricity and deliver natural gas throughout the state. Well, it's not like we are going to take our business and move it elsewhere. And while we can certainly import talent to address our business, we prefer as a culture to really develop our own workforce. And we like to draw from the communities that we serve. And so as a result, we have people in a variety of positions, from running or being in the control room of a nuclear power plant outside of Raleigh, to somebody sitting and taking customer calls here in North Charlotte, and everything in between. But what one common factor is affecting every role in our company is technology. And technology is not only affecting the jobs of our employees, It's affecting the business of being an electric utility, how we generate electricity, how we transmit it and distribute it, is going through such rapid transformation. So as we invest in technology to do that, and you have to, this is not an optional exercise. We have to stay current. We have to become more efficient. So as we make these large investments in technology, we have to make equally large investments in our workforce, because that technology is changing the way people do their jobs. It is creating new jobs, certainly, in many instances, and frankly, it is eliminating certain other jobs. And so we recognize that in an industry that is transforming rapidly, we have to nurture a workforce to help us, not just today, but to be the company we need to be in the future. And so we are making significant investments in that workforce. We started a few years ago warming the culture up to what we called the digital transformation that's occurring in our industry. And it was a two-pronged experience. One was purely business and operational. We wanted to achieve a certain amount of savings through the introduction of technology into our business. But the other was quite certainly, how do we prepare and equip our employees to be successful in that kind of environment? And so we invested a lot in training. We invested a lot in change management. And I cannot understate the importance of change management to reskilling and to retooling a workforce, because change is scary to individuals. Some individuals are longer in their careers than others, and therefore may fear the ability to be retrained. Some are looking at being, train and retool or risk elimination. And so I cannot overstate the importance of change management. And I'm happy to say that Duke really invested a lot in that. And a lot of change management is education, but an awful lot of change management is kind of spreading the word that change is good. Everyone can benefit from change. Our customers will certainly benefit from change, and we really need to rise up to the challenge, not to be afraid of change. And so I would say that the short answer to your question about how important is it to us to reskill our workforce, it's happening every day, and the digital and technology revolution is really it's really requiring us to do it, and so that's how I would.
Well, thank you, Stephen, for the service that Duke Energy provides our state, as well as this change management model that you're using to retool your workforce. So, Stephen, Duke Energy is part of a national business roundtable, which has recently issued a strong statement about the importance of businesses emphasizing retention and the promotion of existing employees as a core business strategy. What's going on with the demographics or the business practice that is fueling this new emphasis?
So the National Business Roundtable is a collection of CEOs from large businesses in the United States. And this group comes together to influence and to promote good, sound public policy. And I don't know how long the organization has been in existence, but I know that for about 3 decades, they have issued a statement of purpose, the purpose of a corporation. And until this year, the statement the statement that this group produced effectively said that a large corporation or a corporation exists to serve its shareholders. And this year, I'm not sure why it took this long or what propelled this group to think differently, but they recast their statement of purpose and they acknowledged something that they had always lived with and dealt with as CEOs, and that is there are many more stakeholders than shareholders, than just shareholders. There are communities, there are shareholders, there are communities, there are suppliers, there are customers, and there are employees. And so the pillar of this new statement of purpose related to employees was one that was, I should have brought up the language to read it directly, but it was to support the development and the general welfare of the employees in the corporation. Pay them well, provide good benefits, and to keep them developed and trained for a healthy career. And Governor Cooper spoke this afternoon about how the state really needs to focus on cradle to career. And I think he would agree that what he really means is cradle through career. And this statement of purpose really embraced that. So let me just say that while that may be a new pronouncement of the National Business Roundtable, I don't think it was hardly new, certainly not new to Duke Energy, and it probably wasn't all that new to this collection of large companies. But I would say that from Duke's perspective, we tried to provide the complete package to our workforce. I talked about reskilling, retooling, training, and so on, and we do those things. We do them as much for our employees or for ourselves as for our employees. I mean, we need a vibrant workforce. But the other things that we do for our employees to make their experience at Duke Energy more full, more satisfying, includes non-compensation things. Certainly benefits, that could be quasi-compensation. We provide strong wages. Even our linemen can make, starting out of the gate, over $40,000 a year, and through career progression, $100,000 a year. And so what our company does is provide things like that and sound parental leave benefits, adoption assistance, things that are outside just pure compensation. So I feel like we are kind of living that creed now, but it was good to see that the National Organization of CEOs did so.
That's great, thank you. As our organization, we travel to all the 58 community colleges across the state, and we've been to 33. And we've seen the major investments that Duke Energy has poured into the lineman program locally, and it is truly remarkable, so thank you for that. Gary, in this year's North Carolina Jobs Agenda, the Chamber called for new efforts to increase access to education and retaining opportunities for currently employed workers. That's not a population we talk about a lot. That would make a huge difference in meeting our skilled worker gap. How are you doing that, and what's your next move in turning that into a reality?
Well, thank you. There's a number of ways. I think some of it's policy related and some of it's not, but an example of how we can work together in the policy arena is, as many of you well know, on the community college side, there's a difference right now in how continuing education versus the academic side of it. I'm having a brain cramp here. Heck, help me. It's continuing education versus Curriculum, excuse me, I'm sorry about that. And so curriculum and continuing education are paid for differently right now. We advocated for, and it was in the budget, to put those on parity so that communities can decide what makes best for them, and that they can come together with their educational institutions so that in the budget, curriculum and continuing education will be paid for the same way. So in order to align the incentives a little bit on the policy side, I worked with President Hans on that piece. So number one is, let's get the incentives aligned. Let's build collaboratives, and let's use data-driven models to do that. I think in the future, we have to experiment a little bit. There's some really good stuff that's going on with our public and private universities and community colleges and early colleges that are in our communities. I think we need to experiment a little bit more with that. You'll see us talking about, imagine if there was Agritech High in Eastern North Carolina. That was about the new and emerging agriculture and life sciences that are going there, that helps with food manufacturing processing that can be something that can be very, very rewarding for folks and keep people in their communities. You'll hear us talking more about how do we give experiential opportunities to young people as early as 6th grade to give them hope. So our foundation looked at how do we take gaming technology and how do we make games into a career and a pathway and show young people that they can do these things. What if we looked at high school differently and did some experiments with our public and private universities and community colleges to say, what if 9th through 12th grade look a little different? What if communities did their demand planning and looked at the data, and X, Y, and Z needed to be produced in that community that were entry level, that needed post-secondary, that needed other skills and sets, and began to develop and facilitate policies that allow on and off ramps to be easier into the education and talent supply system. So we don't know yet. We're in the process of polling our members right now as to what type of those things would happen, talking with our colleagues in the education community and say, what's in your way of continuing to innovate, and how do we talk about the really good stuff that's going on across the state and make other communities say, I want that? And so we'll see us doing a little bit more on that side. Some of that will be policy, and some will be just talking about the good stuff that's going on.